haven't got the appropriate staff here yet. Sorry? Yep. Oh, we're all set to go? Okay. So we'll move on to item number 14. Council submission proposed block offer 2015. Sorry. Yep. I didn't realise she was here. All right. So would somebody like to move the recommendation? Vicky Buck, seconded Phil Clearwater. All right, so can we open this up for questions first? Yanni?
So I've read through the submission. I guess it's just that question I had before. Like, I know we're saying we've got concerns, but I don't see where we're actually saying we're opposed to it. Can someone just highlight where that is? Well, I think it's pretty fundamental. Yeah. Okay, and then the second...
I think that, well, the structure of the submission is designed to make our submission in accordance with our role under the Local Government Act, and I think that's an important statement. So rather than going to the oppose, we actually have to state, I believe, that in taking a sustainable development approach, a local authority should take into account the social, economic and cultural interests of people and communities, the need to maintain and enhance the quality of the environment and the reasonably foreseeable needs of future generations. So, I mean, I really want that to be up front, because we are actually meeting our statutory obligations and making the submission. That's my take on it, anyway.
My understanding from the submission is what we're saying is the risks are simply too great and it should not be allowed to go ahead.
Yeah.
Because the risks are far too great.
Yeah.
And there's too much uncertainty and unknown.
Yes. And it says that in 2.2, the council considers that the risks of deep water offshore petroleum exploration and production in these areas are too great for the reasons described in our submission.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that we're opposed to it. So we can amend that. That's great. The other question I had was in regards to, I know that we're sending a letter to James Stevenson Wallace, who's the General Manager of the Petroleum and Minerals and MB, but could we also send this to the government ministers and MPs and possibly the Prime Minister, so that, you know, it seems to me that they're really the ones that are making the laws, as we've heard from the deputation. I think it would be good to make sure that they're aware of our concerns and actually ask them for a response. Is that something we can do?
We can CC it to relevant ministers.
Well, I think actually sending it directly, asking for a response would be good.
Well, except that it's a request for a submission. I just think that we should. Well, if we're going to write to them and send a copy of it, then we should actually write a separate letter saying these are the concerns that we raised in our submission. We'd be grateful for a response on the generic issues that we've raised.
Particularly the issue around wider public engagement and consultation, which is, I presume, what government are in control of, rather than the person at the agency. Thanks.
Yep. Tim.
I was just wondering, as an organisation, have we spoken to any of the local bodies in the Taranaki area, which, I mean, they have 5 offshore rigs. They live under the shadow of a volcano. So I was just wondering about the economic and safety measures. I mean, it seems ludicrous to propose deep sea oil exploration without proper safety mechanisms, especially next to our Hector's dolphins areas, etc. So, but I'm just wondering on the economic side of things, have we made any contact with them with regards to issues? And I mean, it would seem logical to me that we talk with them as well to see what the problems and issues have been, but also if there are any benefits. Thank you.
Phil, then Pauline.
Thanks for your report and the submission. My question really is, can you tell us about any research which actually indicates any links between deep sea drilling or fracking in effect on land and seismic eruptions or earthquakes?
I have to say, in terms of the manner that it's done offshore, I'm not aware that there's a link between that and seismic activity. I'm more familiar with some potential linkages between what's called fracking and seismic events on land. But in terms of the types of technologies that's used for offshore oil exploration, I'm not aware of it. But then again, I haven't looked into that to see if there is a relationship.
And I guess that it'd still be a concern that, in fact, with deep sea drilling, if in fact that drilling was occurring near especially a known fault or even an unknown fault, that, in your opinion, would that be of concern?
I have to say I'm not a geologist, so I couldn't answer that question without looking into it. Thank you.
Pauline, then Glenn.
Thank you. My question was around, Tiana mentioned there was a lack of an impact assessment report. Is there a possibility that we request that in our submission?
Request a copy of
An impact assessment report. And do you think that would be a viable thing to include? I mean, that would, encompass economic, environmental, all sorts of broad spectrum impacts, I would assume. And just on 3.35 on page 405, when we mention contingency bond, would we want to put a level on that, like not a specific number, perhaps, stating a significant amount, so that it's actually a serious bond, not just a lip service type token gesture?
Isn't it based on the serious? Isn't it already based on most serious outcome? Wasn't that the link back to the bond? I'm sure yes.
Glenn.
That should stop them.
Thank you. I'm also intrigued about the environmental contingency bond, and my question is about how widespread the use of those are, and secondly, how effective they've proven to be.
I don't have a quick answer to that, sorry. But I can certainly check into it, but I am mindful that we are somewhat limited in terms of when we can make the submission. There is a time frame.
What's the deadline for it? 9th of February.
9th of February.
Yeah, 9th of February. So, in terms of getting further information, I think we've got to get this in. And I think you may have heard that we'd like to have the 2 submissions that we had presented today attached as addendum to the submission. Yeah, but I mean, we could actually attach the full submission, but pull some of the key additional points into the submission itself, which was the reference to climate change. I think that was quite a useful addition. Yep, Tim.
I just think at some stage for councillors it would be quite good to have, say, pictures perhaps of a worst case scenario, because we know on average how many barrels are pumped per hour or whatever in New Zealand, and we can base that off Taranaki. And if we look at tides, etc., off the Canterbury coast, so we can, and with the proposed areas where they're looking at drilling, so we can get a better understanding of how devastating this could be if something went wrong. So I think that information's somewhere, but I'm not quite sure where.
I think, in terms, that's useful information for councillors, and
Yes.
maybe we want to follow that up. Maybe the ITE committee would like to pick that up as an issue and follow up on it and get some baseline information for councillors. I think that would be useful, but not to hold up the submission process.
No, absolutely not. No.
Yeah. Has anyone else got any questions? Dave?
Look, I'd just like to clarify Council's position in regard to its, I'm coming to that, in regard to its responsibilities under the Local Government Act as outlined on page 1 of the submission, and how we correlate that with the 12-mile nautical zone, and whether in fact we can say that is this core business for council. I also look at the map of the Great Basin Zone. I do have a support for areas of the proposed block offer that fall inside the 12-mile nautical zone and abut the reserve. However, I really want to sort of question what worth a submission is, what jurisdiction, what whether in fact, you know, people can do whatever outside this 12-mile nautical zone, and whether effectively we're wasting our time making a submission in an area that we have no jurisdiction on, perhaps. I also sort of look at the, 3.17, and, here I take the point of, I think it was Tim asking about what is the reaction of an area like Taranaki that has had offshore drilling for a number of years. And in 3.17, they say while historic oil spill incidence in the area is low, granted the potential is high. And I wonder really whether we are just being a bit alarmist. I have some quite reservations about council being involved in a submission like this.
David, that's actually not a question for staff to answer.
Well, it was a question because I asked about the 12-mile nautical zone.
I don't think that it's relevant to the issue of the submission, and so I think it is the debate that you want to have. But if you want to answer the 12-mile question, then that's fine. I'm not sure where the 12 miles extends to, but I'm presuming that they wouldn't be offering. They wouldn't have a block offer and anything other than the 12-mile limit.
Cuts across at the northwest corner of the block, and the rest of it, from what I can see,
the green area is a reserve area. It's not the 12-mile limit.
No.
Well,
if you look at the map on page 413, see the 12-mile dotted line just coming across.
Yeah, the easternmost limit of the marine mammal sanctuary corresponds to the 12-mile limit.
Oh, yeah.
I think the issue is that oil spills don't recognize boundaries. And that's where, even though my understanding is our jurisdiction goes to the mean high water springs, and it's ECAN's jurisdiction that goes out to the 12-mile limit.
That's right.
But either way, I think the issue is that, again, oil spills don't recognize boundaries.
Yeah, I have made this point too with the unconfined aquifers, that yes, it's ECAN's responsibility to monitor the water, but whose responsibility is it when the water is contaminated? It doesn't respect the regulatory authority when something goes wrong, and it doesn't respect a line on a map when something goes wrong. But that was a political statement, so that's my speech. I don't think there are any more questions, and so now we'll open it up for debate. Yanni.
On that point though, has ECAN made a submission, or have we talked to
Sorry, I've just opened it up for debate. There are no more questions.
I'm happy to debate. Fine.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just really want to commend the deputations that we've heard this morning. I think it's great that this council is helping to give people a voice to a process that they otherwise wouldn't have any opportunity to raise the concerns. And I have a lot of sympathy for those concerns that are being expressed and those concerns that are in the submission. This is gambling with our city's future, and it's not a gamble that I'm prepared to take. So I hope and encourage councillors to support this. It would be great if it was unanimous. We need to send a really strong signal to government that A, we're concerned about the risks associated with such activities, and the risks are unacceptable and we should be opposed. And two, we think it's totally unacceptable that the public are completely shut out of major decisions that are being made about the future of our city, of our country, and particularly of our environment. We've seen that the economic development at any environmental cost has been a bit of a mantra that's been happening in the last few years in New Zealand. And I think it's really important that we do, particularly when you think about what we're trying to do as a city, is absolutely protect that valuable natural environment that we have, that will be the future of our city for why people want to come here and enjoy the things that we have to offer. So if you think about our fantastic coast, you think about our coastal pathway that we're currently working through, you think about the things that we're doing in other parts of the city through the peninsula in terms of walkways, This, I think, is a really good submission, and we should be really strongly opposed to what the government are proposing. I would also encourage us, since I can't ask the question, but just to raise a point in debate, that we should be going to ECAN and expecting ECAN to be making an equally strong submission with concerns, given that they should also be very concerned about what's been proposed. So, yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
Right, Glenn Livingston.
Thank you. I think it's reasonable to say that in Canterbury we've concluded that you can never say never. People say that the risk here is quite low. In my view, the risk outweighs any tenuous gain, which we can see for New Zealand from the report. The estimated RENA cost, and this was not from deep sea drilling as we know, but it was nevertheless an oil spill, was $130 million. That was for the fuel cargo and the ship. That's aside from any environmental effect, and I don't have any figures on a costing. 130, let that be the contingency bond or the kind of bond we put in place. Let's submit on this, let's submit strongly, and let's ensure that our view is heard. Thanks.
Andrew Turner.
I'm strongly supportive of the content of the submission. I'd like to start off this morning by thanking the two groups that have made deputations this morning for the additional information that they have brought us. One of the frustrations of this for me is that once again the City Council becomes the forum for groups to make comments which are really directed at the government process. And whilst there is a frustration in that, and it would be great if people were able to have their say directly through a more open submissions process, it's good that we are able to play a role in taking that information through to government in our own submission. As the Councillor for Banks Peninsula, I inevitably think of this issue in the context of our unique Banks Peninsula environments, and in particular our coastal environments and coastal landscapes, the unique Hector's dolphins, and of course, you know, the wider environmental concerns of the proximity of what's proposed to be allowed contiguous to our marine mammal sanctuary. And the Mayor certainly made the point that you know, the boundary is in water, and an oil spill certainly wouldn't respect that boundary. The effects of any oil spill would be far greater for Banks Peninsula and for the wider area than environmental. If I think of Akaroa in particular, but the peninsula in general, we have a tourism industry which is based on that natural environment and landscape, and which is based on waterborne activities. We've got cruise ships that bring in thousands of international visitors every year through Akaroa, and we've got a local community there which in terms of its economy relies on tourism for survival. The difference between Akaroa in summer and in winter is significant in terms of its economic ability and just the look and feel of the place. If something were to go wrong as a result of the oil drilling that we're talking about this morning, Akaroa will be subject to a permanent winter, and that certainly wouldn't be a good situation. So I'm strongly supportive of the Council's submission and the addition of elements that we've heard this morning into that, and urge my colleagues to support it in the same way.
Tim Scandrett.
Thank you. I was on one of the on the working party that worked on this some time ago. My real concern is when you put safety measures to prepare them, you are ready to go. The information we have there, New Zealand is not prepared for any major oil spill. It's amazing how close this is to the coast, or some of these blocks are, and I believe that if there were a major spill, it could well cause the extinction of the Hector's dolphin, and it'd certainly stop our struggling inshore fishing industry. I think until New Zealand, and especially in this proposal, that we are truly prepared to prevent some form of oil spill, that we cannot support any oil drilling in New Zealand or in this area as well. So thank you.
Vicky Buck.
Thank you, and I think the point about the safety is absolutely key. The wells in Taranaki are much closer to shore. In fact, Anadarko haven't found any deep sea oil in Taranaki yet. So the risks of deep sea oil drilling are as yet unknown in New Zealand. Probably our best analogy is with Shell up in the up in the North Sea, and there are regular oil spills. There are always oil spills. New Zealand's capacity to deal with those is 3 small vessels which can allegedly deal with 5,500 tonnes. So the oil has to be incredibly well behaved and stay only at 5,500 tonnes and not move in the ocean with massive waves. So this is a scenario that is so ridiculous. When these first came to us, actually the 2014 block had the oil drilling block offer actually coming through our marine mammal reserve. The idea that it will stay nicely outside it and that no dolphins will ever swim into the oil is mildly amusing if it wasn't so tragic in the event that any of that happened. We've seen over the last year the impact of a disaster on this city's economy. We know that the cost of recovering from that, for us, will be billions, and it will take 25 to 30 years. The cost of recovering, if you look at what happened in the Gulf of Mexico on the 20th of April 2010, I remember it well, with that massive oil spill, with all of the wealth of America and all of the American military apparatus and the American oil machine apparatus, they could not contain that spill. We're expecting that the oil companies will do that themselves out of their good grace. And we're just, the idea that we believe that's going to happen is so wrong on so many levels. For Christchurch, our economy, and we only need to look at the figures of what goes through the port of Littleton, our economy is reliant on agriculture and horticulture. It's reliant on our clean water, our clean land, and our clean image. And to put all of that at risk for what? For an industry that we're currently subsidising, that the price of oil has currently fallen from $108 to $48 a barrel. I'm hoping like crazy that actually scuttles us far more effectively than any of our submissions will, because I hope the cost of drilling is way more than that, although it is subsidised by the government. We know that there are risks on the Heathcote River that we have to clean up. We know that there are potential risks if we don't act on our unconfined aquifers. We cannot allow risks to happen at sea. For New Zealanders, one of the highest values culturally that we put on this country is our beaches. And to put our water, our entire economy at risk for some oil, which actually we can't refine in this country. So even if we were looking at it in terms of our economic well-being and our energy self-sufficiency, this does not do it. This oil cannot be refined at the only refinery New Zealand has. So it's not for us. And actually, Siana's point about the fact that we cannot, as a planet, afford to burn or to use the fossil fuels that we already know about is very well made. You're seeing the snowstorms in Boston, the droughts in the East Coast, all of those extreme weather events much more frequently are the result of climate change. And we cannot afford to advance down that track by helping accelerate it. So I think we can certainly grunt this up. I agree completely about the need for public consultation on this. This is something that for New Zealanders is so fundamental to who we are, our sea, that not allowing public input into it is absurd and horrible. But there is just no way that this makes any economic sense. Never mind the environment just for a moment, although I do. Economically, it is such high risk that it does not stack up.
Excellent. Thank you. Very well put. All right, I shall put that motion. Oh, David, I was kind of hoping that Vicky would get to close off the debate since it was her issue, but I might have to re-enter the debate myself.
I'm in a bit of a quandary, I suppose. Look, I support if you're looking at the concluding remarks of the submissions, I actually support the first 3 bullet points in terms of modifying the boundaries of the block zone, but I have some difficulty with the rest of the summary in terms of the economic potential economic advantage to our country, and the fact that we have offshore drilling has occurred in New Zealand for a number of years with minimal and low risk of, the low incidence of any oil spill. So I can give some support to the submission, but not total. So I'm not sure quite how I would vote on that. And maybe a way around it would be that I would vote for the submission, but record my reservations about the disadvantage to the economic advantage to the country.
Yeah, look, I'm quite happy for you to do that. I just want to read one sentence into the record, which is, while the probability of the occurrence of an adverse event may not be high, the outcome of such an event can be catastrophic. And that's the risk rating for me.
That's my position.
Yeah. All right, so I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.